let's start at the top here. Vitamin B12 and omega-3s, we talked about that. Fortunately, I didn't get to talk about all this juicy stuff about DHA. Suffice to say, if you are even contemplating getting pregnant or are diabetic, you should take 300 milligrams of DHA every day, such that your baby gets it from months before, ideally months before conception, throughout weaning. And there are vegan sources in veggie caps available. It may actually be reasonable for all non-fish eaters to take DHA. It is an unanswered research question at this point. That is in addition to flaxseed for diabetics and pregnant and breastfeeding moms. Yes, indeed. And maybe appropriate for everyone. That's an unanswered question. Next, everyone have the copy? Get your vitamin D. Major study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition last summer found, quote, irrefutable evidence that vitamin D deficiency is a major unrecognized epidemic in the United States. Wait a second, isn't it just a sunshine vitamin? Can't you go out and just get a little sunshine? Not in Ithaca, not during the winter. Unfortunately, during the months of January and February, the sun's rays at this latitude are at such an angle that no matter how long you sunbathe naked here in Ithaca during January and February, you are just not going to make enough vitamin D, so you need to get it into your diet. One can actually get an entire day's supply naturally in a few mushrooms. Shiitake mushrooms and chanterelle mushrooms actually have natural vitamin D in them, but you have to eat like a dozen mushrooms a day. Certainly there's a lot of vitamin D fortified foods like the soy milks and rice milks and other motherless milks out there, as well as fortified breakfast cereals may come in handy here. And if you're not pasty white or don't want to die of skin cancer, so correctly use sunscreen, or you're young, or you're old, or if you own a cable modem, or don't get outside for whatever reason, you may want to take vitamin D in your diet year-round and not just during the winter. Okay. And so for vitamin D, the current recommendation is 200 international units a day for up to age 50, 450 to 70, and over age 70, 600 international units, although all of those are probably going up. So probably everyone needs a minimum of 400 international units, although the Institute of Medicine hasn't ruled on that yet. All right, next, 700 to 1,000 milligrams a day of calcium? Wait a second. I thought we didn't eat all that calcium because we don't eat all that calcium-leaching animal protein, right? Well, if I may point you back to the 10 most common myths about vegetarian diets, and this article is a full text online. You can see it, the URL is on the bottom of that handout. And myth number 2 is vegetarians need less calcium than meat eaters. It's a myth. It's not true. And I don't have a lot of time to talk about calcium, although I certainly can do it in question and answer. I would refer everyone to this very important article written by Ginny Messina called Hip Fracture Rates and Vegan Calcium Needs. And again, that article is online or up here. So, are you eating 3 cups of kale a day? 3 cups of bok choy, 3 cups of collards? Well, you should. That's how everyone should get their calcium. Or drinking 3 cups of calcium-fortified soy milk or 3 cups of calcium-fortified orange juice. If you're not, you're probably not getting your recommended daily intake of calcium, so you may want to take a calcium supplement. I'd be happy to talk about calcium supplements if people are interested at the end. Now, you could drink the milk from a cow, but nutritionally, cow's milk is not the best source of calcium. It doesn't have lots of the wonderful things that dark green leafies have that are very important for your bone health, like vitamin K and boron and vitamin C, all important for bone health, but missing in dairy milk. And dark leafy greens don't have a lot of things that you don't want, like the saturated fat and cholesterol and antibiotics and hormones and pus and all those other things that we don't want in milk, and retinol. Vitamin A palmitate, this animal-derived vitamin A that's added to the low-fat milk supply and is thought to critically weaken people's bones. That's why in the Harvard Nurses study, which looked at over 68,000 women, found that those that drank the most milk had the most fractures. And the reason they think is because the low-fat milk, they were all health conscious, so drinking low-fat milk, right, because they didn't want to die of heart disease, drinking low-fat milk, and low-fat milk has this vitamin A palmitate or retinol added to it, and is thought to interfere with bone metabolism. And that's why we think these Seventh-day Adventist vegetarians out in California were breaking their hips so often, because they were all health conscious and drinking lots of low-fat milk, and that was weakening their bones. We won't know that until it's actually published, but that's the leading hypothesis at the moment. Iodine. Alarming rates of iodine deficiency have been found among British vegans because they don't iodize salt over there. Now, the British milk drinkers were protected because they use iodine-containing disinfectants to disinfect the milk processing tanks and kind of leaches into the milk. It's kind of gross. But low iodine intake can lead to hypothyroidism, which can lead to high cholesterol and high homocysteine. So, if you don't use iodized salt or eat sea vegetables, right, or drink milk, you need to get iodine from somewhere. And so you may want to take a supplement or eat some sea vegetables. You know, if you're one of those that uses natural sea salt, don't. If you use table salt, which is not a good idea for your health, but if you use table salt, you should use iodized table salt. It's a convenient way to get your iodine. And the best article I've seen to date on this is this written by Stephen Walsh in the Vegan Society. And so, again, this iodine article is available online and up here as well. Iron. Given the new RDAs in the United States, it would seem the only way a vegetarian woman could get enough iron is to eat rusty nails every day. And indeed, 9 out of 10 studies done on Western vegetarians have found that vegetarians are more likely to be iron depleted, have lower iron stores, but we don't seem to have higher rates of iron deficiency anemia, and that's really what we're worried about. But just because vegetarian women don't have higher rates of iron deficiency and anemia than meat eaters doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot, because meat eaters have such crappy rates in the first place. Basically, 1 in 20 menstruating women in this country have iron deficiency anemia, which is a serious disease. So, vegetarian women, eat your beans, greens, grains, and nuts, and eat vitamin C-rich foods with your meals, which enhances iron absorption, as well as getting yourself screened for anemia every year or every few years, like when you get your PAP. And men shouldn't do anything unless first being tested for an iron overload disease called hemochromatosis. If you think you're anemic, you should really get tested. I don't think anyone should just take iron supplements without a prescription. Selenium works as an important cancer-fighting antioxidant. A problem for Northern European vegetarians because they have selenium-deficient soil. Not a problem for North American vegetarians, but if anyone has any British, Belgian, Swedish, or Slovakian vegetarian friends, you may want to tell them to eat some Brazil nuts every month. All right, not a day should go by without everyone eating greens, beans, nuts, whole grains, and fresh fruit. All right. So what's so good about greens? What's not good about greens? It's the healthiest single thing that we can possibly eat. Right? Eating just 1 serving of dark leafy greens or broccoli every day, and you cut your risk of hip fracture in half. Right? I am just in awe of greens. You should eat them every day. While we're on the subject of best and worst, the greens are the best thing we can eat. Anyone know what the most toxic or dangerous food or food ingredient in our current food supply is? What's the worst? Sugar is bad, but there's worse. Soda is bad, but there's worse. Coffee? Yeah, a lot of coffee is bad, but there's worse. Shout it out. Salt's not good, but there's worse. Saturated fat is bad, right? Bad, but there's worse. White flour is bad, but there's worse. Corn oil is no good for you, but there's worse. This cannot be the first audience. I've been on the road 11 months. Come on. Not the... You want to breathe? All right. What? Plutonium. Trans fats. Hydrogenated oils. All right. Trans fats these toxic trans fats are found only one place in nature. Animal fats. All animal fats contain these toxic trans fats. But, thanks to better living through chemistry, the food industry found a way to synthetically create these toxic fats by hardening vegetable oil in a process called hydrogenation, which rearranges their atoms and makes them act more like animal fats And the national, so there's, good fats, there are bad fats, then there are killer fats, and those are these trans fats. The National Academy of Science just a few months ago published this damning report on trans fats and said the only safe intake is 0. That the upper limit tolerable intake daily is 0. Now wait a second, if the National Academy of Sciences is saying the only safe intake is 0, and it's only found in animal foods and processed foods, are they telling everyone to go vegetarian? Right? That makes sense. Well, actually they didn't. So they were challenged on it, and one of the authors of the report responded to the challenge, a nutritional epidemiologist at the Harvard School of Public Health, responded to the challenge, and he said, quote, "We can't tell people to stop eating all meat and all dairy products," he said. "Well, we could tell people to become vegetarians," he added. "If we were truly basing this only on science, we would, but it is a bit extreme." Isn't that amazing? Wouldn't want scientists to base anything on science, would we? Oh. I just had to get that out. All right. What's so good about beans? A study just came out. Those who ate legumes, beans, peas, or lentils 4 times a week or more had 20% less heart disease. All right. Beans are good for your heart. The more you eat, the more. All right. Those who ate nuts at least 5 times a week had half the mortality rates, half the cardiac mortality, those who ate 5 servings of nuts or more a week. And for those of you who are like, oh, I don't want to eat nuts because they're going to make me fat. Actually, there's an impressive body of research to suggest that those people who add nuts to their diet, if anything, actually lose weight. And we're not sure why, whether it satiates the appetite or actually causes you to excrete more fat in your feces. We're not sure why, but bottom line, nuts will not make you fat. You should eat them every day. All right.
What kind of nuts?
Basically any nuts except coconuts and chestnuts. So, And peanuts, although they're technically legumes, have a nutritional profile which closely resembles other nuts. And so again, any nuts, nut butters, cashew butter, almond butter, there's some nuts that are a little better than other ones, but basically nuts are nuts, but I could go specifically down through a list of better and worse later on. Next, studies also consistently show that even health-conscious vegetarians don't eat the recommended minimum number of servings of fruits and vegetables every day, which is... Whoa, not bad, right? 5 a day, I heard 5 a day saying, 5 a day, that was a few months ago. But the front row knows, right? The National Cancer Institute just a few months upped it to 9 a day, minimum, right? 9, so you thought you weren't doing so good before, now you're really behind, right? That's the minimum, so 9 a day, 10 a day, 12 a day, as many fruits and vegetables as you can possibly stuff in your face. All right. Next, drink lots of water. No, seriously. Seventh-day Adventist study presented to Congress last year. Vegetarian or not, those that drank 5 glasses of water every day had half the cardiac mortality, half the fatal stroke rate. What? You don't eat meat, nothing happens. If you eat some nuts, drink some water, you have your mortality rates? Absolutely amazing, right? While we're on the subject, is there anything else I can just kind of down and dirty have your mortality rate? Well, in the German vegan study, for example, they found out that those who were, quote unquote, who, surprise, surprise, physically active, had half the mortality rates of those couch potatoes or computer potatoes or whatever the case may be. And maybe get your cholesterol checked. Who knows what your cholesterol is? Oh, everybody should know what their cholesterol is. The current recommendation is everyone starting at age 20 should get their cholesterol checked and get it rechecked every 5 years. And quit smoking. Cigarettes slice at least like 8 years off your life. All right, last but not least, Z is for zinc. I didn't mention anything specifically about zinc on there because, once again, greens, beans, nuts, and whole grains to the rescue. Vegetarians, though, are prone to low-body zinc pools, however. Inadequate zinc intake can impair one's immunity, impair one's taste sensation, and impair one's appetite. Serious deficiency can lead to growth stunting or small testicles. no one's actually gone around and measured the size of vegetarian testicles, but there was a taste acuity study that found that vegetarians couldn't taste as well as meat eaters. Now, I've kissed a few, and I think vegetarians taste pretty good. But, no, indeed, we should think about zinc. And while I'm being risque, especially men, since we lose like 20% of our RDA for zinc in every seminal emission, that's a good half cup of nuts right there. So, I'm serious. Beans, particularly sprouted or fermented, like tempeh and miso. Nuts and seeds, again, dry roasted or sprouted, are good sources. And again, fortified breakfast cereals may come in handy here as well. All right. My final words. When I first learned about this stuff, my first thought was like, it just doesn't seem natural, right? All these pills and weird oils and stuff. I mean, like when human beings were evolving, they didn't take no calcium supplements, right? Well, then I looked at that. I mean, they certainly weren't getting it from milk. Prehistoric peoples got all the calcium they needed from eating wild plants like nettles, which are just loaded with calcium. It's estimated that prehistoric peoples got 2,000 milligrams of calcium every single day eating wild plants, right? That's 3 times what milk drinkers get in this country, right? But we just don't eat those kind of plants anymore because of the way we live in our modern world, right? And cavemans didn't have to take no flax, right? Well, again, that's because their ratio was 1-to-1. There's no such thing as trans fats, no such thing as cottonseed oil, right? And, interestingly, many of the wild plants have higher omega-3 contents than the cultivated ones. So, for example, purslane, the most common plant in the world, is dug up here as a weed, but everywhere else they eat it because it's so good for you, is one of the highest plant omega-3 contents in the world. But we don't eat weeds anymore. We eat iceberg lettuce, right? And they didn't have to take no vitamin D. That's because they lived and worked outside. That's because they could work outside because there wasn't a big hole in the ozone layer. There weren't these smog-ridden cities and all that, And they didn't have to take no B12. We used to be able to get all the B12 we needed from the water we drank. Drinking out of a mountain stream or well water, But we don't get a lot of B12 anymore in our water because we chlorinate our water supply to kill off all the bacteria, right? So we don't get a lot of vitamin B12 in our water anymore. We don't get a lot of cholera either, right? So that's a good thing, right? But the bottom line is that we live in an unnatural world, which is compromising our health, compromising our vegetarian potential. But we can reclaim that potential with but a few simple changes and live a long life in optimum health. Thank you.